The Prime Minister's confirmed he's received intelligence suggesting Iran is responsible for a lethal plane crash. The Ukraine International Airlines jet had just taken off from Tehran when it rapidly lost altitude, killing all 176 people on board. Investigators have been looking at 4 possible causes, including mechanical failure. Speaking on Sydney Radio 2GB, Scott Morrison says all signs point to Iran, but it doesn't appear to be a deliberate act.
Well, I can confirm that we have had similar intelligence, but as our partners have on these things. But what I would say is that it's just I mean, this is not a deliberate act, as we can determine, but it's not as best as we can understand.
So as we understand it, it was an accident.
It's a terrible accident.
Mr Morrison's also held a phone call with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, demanding an international investigation into the tragedy, as well as access to the crash site.
In light of this new information, it is now more important than ever that we know exactly how such a tragedy could have happened. The families of the victims and all Canadians want answers. I want answers.
Just hearing the Canadian Prime Minister really focus, as he rightly should, on the fact that this has given these families just this unimaginable extra layer of grief surrounding what has been such a volatile few days, with nobody really knowing what the consequences of all this would be. And nobody could have imagined that this might be one of them. And that's what it seems the growing consensus, realization, not just there in Canada, but also here in the US in the hours before that statement from Justin Trudeau. There really was this feeling. Reuters, the news agency, was reporting that a US official had told them that 2 minutes after the plane took off, heat signatures were detected from 2 surface-to-air missiles near the plane. And really, in terms of the routine collection of data that the US carries out from radar, electronic data, a number of US officials have told US media that it did point towards this being an Iranian missile that took down this passenger jet.
It was flying in a pretty rough neighborhood, and somebody could have made a mistake. Some people say it was mechanical. I personally don't think that's even a question, personally. So we'll see what happens. At some point, they'll release the black box. Ideally, they'd get it to Boeing, but if they gave it to France or if they gave it to some other country, that would be okay, too. I think, ideally, that will be released. I have a feeling that it's just something very terrible happened.
Just 2 hours after Iran had launched those missiles, that really became such a focus. Just a short time ago, certainly here in Washington, when that initially happened, it did feel like we were on the brink of something horrific. And then, of course, Donald Trump took the decision not to fire back. For now, obviously, he always says that all options are still possible, but for now they're focusing on sanctions.